Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Christ consciousness. What I'm going to cover today is radionic psychic warfare. I was the first person to publish a book on this that was written by the infamous author Charles Cosamato, and I published many of his books many years ago. I think it's been like 34 years now. And several other things that he had written. This was a book he had written for many years. When I approached him, he had it already written, and this was a cutting-edge book. I think it was originally titled Psionic Warfare. I changed it to Psionic Combat because I had a book on psychic warfare available, and I still do. That is available for sale if you're interested in learning that. It's part of the Psychic Sexual Command Book 2, which kind of is a process with, it's a sexy name, but basically it's a psychic influencing text. So, and as such, these are cutting edge. There isn't much out there, particularly at the time. You're talking about 30, 40 years ago. This was really cutting edge. And while this text was very primitive and very low-level understanding of the whole field, it was fun, interesting, and exciting. And the bottom line in life is that everyone who is active in life, as Winston Churchill stated, he asked a man, he said, "Do you have any enemies?" And the man said, "Well, yes, I do." He said, "Good, it shows you've done something in life." And I think that's very true. People I know that don't have very many enemies or don't get into conflicts are weasels that hide in corporations and never get into conflict and hide their head in the sand while other people have to do the fighting for them. One of the problems that we need to understand, I don't think anybody can quibble with the fact that we need to have proper, just, and uncorrupted military and law enforcement. I don't think anybody argues with that. You don't want to be a victim to the horrible, bad people that are out there without the fact of having some sort of basic support. So we need these things if they're done correctly. In this day and age, we don't have that. We have unmilitary, law enforcement who basically are just criminals with badges. There's really nothing more to say about it. So the whole idea is that retribution, which is the term that I like to have, is very important. Retribution and justice is what is justified in this world. If someone hurts you and regular justice can't handle that, well, you deserve retribution for being damaged, and it must be clear. The same thing with justice. You can't get justice. Justice is for those in power, and justice is a word that means nothing. America likes to put fancy statues out front with scales, and it's blind, and justice has never been based in equal and never been blind. You get different justice depending on what you're in power. And a lot of people like to say, well, of course you don't get justice because you're a black man or a colored man in most places or Hispanic, etc. And of course this is changing because now there's opposite prejudice, which I guess is due in many of these systems because there's just others have now come in. But what few people understand is that there's an entire white class, and this is never talked about. And there are those at the top that use and abuse and step on you because you're not their class. There's the lower class, of course, and I think we all know that. But there's this weird middle between low middle class, middle class, and upper middle class, and rich that is just staggering. And someday I'll talk about this, but people don't understand that, and particularly blacks or other people. People don't understand that if you're poor, if your daddy ain't looked at in the community, if you don't dress right or go to the particularly schools, which are the class system in the United States, that you are scum and treated differently. And if you're from different parts of the country. So the whole idea is, if you're from some part and a different part, if you're a New Yorker living in California, well, the Californians don't like New Yorkers. New Yorkers probably don't like Californians. And I always used to... I met this one New Yorker in a bar in Palm Springs. He said, "Hey," he's an Italian guy. Hey, supposedly playing for some band. He was in a kind of a swinger bar, and he said, "Everything here is fake." "Oh yeah, New York is real." There's real mafia, real corruption. They like to talk about Hollywood, in the terms of that, all them Hollywood pedophiles. It's terrible. They all seem to be from Hollywood. Really? Because when you look at the history of satanic pedophile organizations, they seem to be in the suburbs of New York, particularly Yonkers, Riverdale. Interesting. These seem to be hotbeds of horrific pedophilia and actual murders, as well as ritual murders, finding dogs cut in half, heads cut off. And this went on for years. Yonkers, what a great place. I wish I could move there. So, hey. And of course, it was better when it was run by the mob, who was running the things back then as well, but apparently was either involved in it or didn't care. So, everything's fake in La La Land. Well, I haven't found real people anywhere, so I don't know what that's all about. So, and I was not born in California. My parents were from the Bronx. So the whole idea is that, hey, I'm part of that as well, 33rd Street people. I certainly understand that, even though my parents didn't speak like that, but that's the point. So the whole idea is that that's the reality of what's going on there. So, understanding all that is important. So retribution is important, which means you have been wronged and hurt against natural law or the higher law or even the law of that place, and you did not get justice, so you deserve retribution. Secondly, justice in general. So what we want in this life, and that's not what law enforcement is. Judges are supposed to figure out what justice is, but they keep messing with that as well, because judges don't have a lot of control of things, because they either go bonkers, oh, you stole bread, you're in prison for the rest of your life. It's happened in California with the 3 strikes law. So some poor Latino who was stealing bread and other things got life in prison because he did it 3 times. That's what the law was all about, right? Now, we get to pay for this guy to stay $50,000 a year to keep him in prison. Why don't we pay him $50,000 out of prison? It would help the economy. He would pay taxes. I don't think he would steal. This is the kind of nonsense we get into. But this is the kind of inequity. But the bottom line is, since everybody is corrupt and evil, and the only way to get out of that scheme is to join the scum. So what do you do? Now, Radionic warfare has been something that is generally called psychotronic warfare and has been around for a long time. These type of subtle energy weapons have been used and talked about for going back now to the 50s, and probably we're even in the 40s. We're talking about the psychotronic weapons that were produced by the Soviet Union and others there. And there are pictures of these. You can find them online. Go to YouTube and put in psychotronic warfare or weapons. And there's a little movie about this narrated by Roger Moore. You can see these odd devices that are psychotronic in nature. They were shaped energy devices that projected out that the Russians perfected. And these are things you can't find anywhere, by the way. And I wouldn't go snooping for them, because you'll find out you're in the river. That's what I was told by the Russians. So, as the Russian told me, he said, we have great Russian technology. It's called ionizer. I said, we buy that at the Walmart. Yeah, it's great technology. I said, what about the psychotronic weapons, though? Weapons? Psychotronics? You want to be in river? So, that was always interesting. So, the whole idea is that this is a reality. And in life, there's a lot of bad people that will hurt you, have hurt you, and will hurt you, your family, and everything else. As a matter of fact, if they could, they would cut your throat. They also like to work in sneak thief ways by hurting and attacking you, going to your friends and family, manipulating everything they can. So there's just a lot of bad people. That's the nature of it. And this goes into a bigger picture of basically the evil pandemic that has swept through the human race since the beginning. And at this particular point, I don't know if it's ever really been any different, but you've got a population that is 98% evil and corrupt. They're all working with the evil people and like to hear stories people tell them about others so that they can feel justified in working with scum demons. And they're basically at that level. The horrific things that go on by so-called justice, law enforcement, and the military is unconscionable. And they're sanctioned by government, which is even more frightening. So as we understand all these things, that you as an individual have to make sure that if you are dealing with evil, bad people and they can't be stopped in proper methods, well, you do your own personal work there. So instead of getting a gun and shooting somebody or killing them, which will then cost you your life, that is, of course, an emotional response which may be very justified. But the price to pay for that is dear. The whole idea is to do like governments have done and set up your psychotronic weapons so you can disrupt, kill. The Russians did a lot of studies on sending people cursed items. They magically cursed them, put demons in there, and sent packages to people. Now, it's unknown of how effective all this stuff was, and if it was effective, they'll say it wasn't effective. So, if it wasn't effective, they won't say one way or another. So there's no way to get facts on these things because they don't want to, I cannot deny or confirm that information. So, this is the kind of thing you get to. So the fact that radionic warfare is quite common. This is being done now because of the massive amount of evil practitioners who now run the radionic industry, make machines, and have been for the last 30 years, that are heavily involved in satanic practices and who are evil people connected to organized crime and so many other things. And what's amusing is a lot of these people are also connected to the U.S. military. But they're not doing anything for enemies, they're doing things for themselves. So let's remember that. It has been alleged, and we're pretty sure it's real, that the U.S. Air Force has banks of psychotronic-type weapons in Cherokee Mountain, and there is a group of special intelligence officers that are tuning these for different reasons. So, and all this is based on subtle energy physics. I don't know if they understand subtle energy physics like I have been able to figure it out and understand the entire process or not, but I'm sure they kind of have it, because subtle energy physics is very similar to regular physics, except that we're dealing with what is the non-physical. They claim everything is physical, which I think is just childish. What kind of physical? So, and that's a term you could argue for hours about. So the whole idea is that you have this reality going on where people have been doing this. This is nothing new. Now, the problem with all this is many problems. People think, well, if this is possible, why would there be any wars? We also have super advanced, what are called DEW weapons, directed energy weapons, which are not radionic or subtle energy based. They are directed energy, which basically is best understood as a laser beam, which will burn through or blow something up, or some other like that, microwaves and other things. But they tend to be very physical and very detectable. Now, psychotronic and radionic type weapons are quite different. What you're doing is that these are tools that have been traditionally used to heal people and been proven to do very well at that. It was Delaware actually cured, I think, a judge's wife of some illness, and of course was released from his lawsuit that they were suing him on because the judge said it worked. So here's another proof of how this technology works, but Delaware and others have pretty much come down to the fact because they don't understand the subtle energy physics of it. So this is just all psychic. And of course, there are people doing psychic healings at a distance, called hands-on healing, who have proven that this stuff works by just thinking about making it work in somebody else. And apparently have all sorts of actual proof of this. I don't know, yet to be confirmed. If it isn't proven to me personally, I don't believe it anybody says. But what does that mean? So if you can take something as toxic and as terrible as cancer and get rid of it, why can't you manufacture it? Cancer is in all of us all the time. So it's just when you're going to get cancer, not if, to a large degree. But it is living within you, and it's constantly being destroyed by your body. And sometimes your body can no longer do that. Something happens and you get cancer. Well, that process of, quote, something happening can be manifested in your body. So if it can cure you, it can make you ill. It's as simple as that. So there's also the fact that is you're dealing with subtle energy physics, which is not the same of injecting a poison in someone, but you can get the vibration of a poison and send it to that person. Now, none of this stuff is some sort of hit. It is not something that works instantly, even though there's always that, I don't know, it's now up to about 15% of the cases that I work on are virtually miraculous in nature. And it has been reported back. This incident, within 2 or 3 days, something amazing happens. The latest case was the fact that someone would not sign papers in a divorce situation, to sell the house for a year. 1 week after I worked on this guy, he signed the papers. We had one person who was abusing somebody terribly, physically and mentally, and had hurt this person over years. So, negative energies, you could say the person was cursed. 2 weeks later, the woman calls me up and said, I didn't think anything was happening. I just opened the paper today and his obituary is here. Oh, terrible, isn't it? So the whole idea is these things can happen, and this is all part of it. If you can heal, you can hurt. If you can produce positive energies to help people in life, you can also put curses on them where everything they do goes wrong. And if something goes wrong sometime, and let's say you get somebody who spins out on an icy road, well, in normal situations, that could just turn into a fender bender, or maybe nothing, or maybe you just spun out. With bad energy, you hit a tree, and that could kill you. So these are all the facts of what goes on with this whole area of radionic warfare, or the use of psychic powers or psychic energies, often called psychic warfare. So a lot of this is never talked about. And the point is that you have to make sure you're 100% right if you take any action against people. One of the problems I always run into is that if someone starts talking about this, about a family situation. Now, certainly there are some real scumbuckets who abuse, beat, and torture people in their own family, molest them, etc., and probably deserve anything that the higher powers will give them. On the other hand, when you come to relationships, nobody is 100% right. I just dealt with a total lunatic who was having problems, who wanted to hire me to work on his case. And this is what you have to be very careful of when you take on clients, and wanted to learn radionics and everything else. Well, that wasn't going to happen. The guy's a complete mental case. It's amazing that he ever got to marry anybody. Anyway, you're talking about a very mentally disturbed person. So all of these situations as a practitioner, and I'm going to be having a practitioner course up there, the Ultimate Practitioner course, which tells you how to use magic and radionics in a business sense, as well as for yourself, obviously. But, this is, again, training. You're not going to learn this by taking a course. Oh, I completed a course. Did I get the questions? Yeah, you got the questions right. That doesn't make you a practitioner. That makes you a pseudo-knowledge person. Yeah, you got a little bit of quasi, I should say. Pseudo means false. Quasi, kind of. You got some kind of knowledge. But, I spent 40 years doing this stuff. So, as an issue just came up recently, I don't get rates by using pendulums and turning the dial. And I tell you people, that's how it's done. I just touch the dial and the number comes into my third eye. Simple as that. So, that's what happens when you're a master. How long did that take? Well, it took 30 years and lots of training. On every level, not just getting a book or a machine, you have to do the training that I have outlined in my courses. The gold mine is there. The problem with a gold mine, and you have to think of it as that, is what is a gold mine? Well, I can guarantee you there's gold in them hills. The problem is you're going to dig down and deep and long, and it's going to be stressing, and to a certain extent it's going to be dangerous. That's how you find gold. That's how you learn things in the bigger picture. It's not just watching porn eating McDonald's and wishing it was good. I like the Lord of the Ringies, written by a psychotic Catholic. So the whole idea is that these things are fantasy, and people love that. And it's amazing, all these fantasy guys, the Dungeon and Dragon types, that are all fat little kids who never learned to do real combat. They want to play on a board only. So this is part of the whole process here. So the fact that this is something that every radionic practitioner should learn. You need to learn to protect yourself and change evil people, which is pretty much 98% of the population. This is part of life. And we do this all the time. I mean, we basically take the medicine out of our mouths, the housing away from our people, the food out of their bellies, because we spend $2 trillion a year on military. $2 trillion when you add everything up. So it's pretty amusing how all these things go. So we do that, and we do that because of corruption, not because we need it. So it doesn't seem to do much because it isn't stopping any wars anywhere. And when the America gets involved in wars, well, they never really win them. Have they ever really won a war? And I've been trying to figure that out, if you've ever really won a war. When you really look down to it, certainly America never won a war by itself, and certainly wasn't instrumental in winning most of anything, particularly with the horrible officer corps that America has produced. So the whole idea is that we really need to look at these things and what they are and the influences that they have. But this is part of life. So the whole idea is there's a whole area of advanced radionics that deals with all this. We have some of this, or at least we have justice tools that are on our website. And these tools have been very effective, and they work in a subtle energy physics way, and they work in a unique way. But you can go to that actual page. You may be required for a password, which you email us and we send it to you. We just don't want people stumbling on that and getting offended by it. It's for someone looking for that. So the whole idea is that we need to understand that in life. And this is something you have to deal with. And don't think that in any way it isn't real and you can't do it. That's what this technology does. But it isn't a bullet. It isn't a rocket. It's something that you have to be skilled, you have to be qualified to do, and it takes time. As with all these things, there's always a certain percentage of things that seem to work miraculously. 1, 2, 3, it's done. As I said, that's about 15%, which has actually grown dramatically from 5% over the last few years just by my own personal skill. But other than that percentage, the rest of it is a matter of sending things out. And there is a certain amount of justice. We work for justice energies and for retribution. So there is an energy that goes with that. Meaning the fact, if you're not doing it for a legitimate purpose, these tend not to work. Especially if you use my technology, because I build that in. If you're going to attack somebody who's good and you're unjustified, you're trying to steal their wife or hurt somebody over your maniac realities, over your screwed up thinking, well, it's not going to work for you. There also seems to be a higher energy that is in all of these things. It's in magic, it's in radionics. And, you may want something, but if it ain't good for you, or it isn't based in the ultimate justice of the universe, it doesn't work out for you. So, a lot of people want something in life. This is particularly true with relationships, and they fight like hell to make that happen. Usually, if they're using the technologies that I offer, you will get that, but you'll be mired in constantly having to control that person and fix their errors, and you will get disgusted and you will end up hating that person. I've seen that many, many times. They want this person. You're stuck on somebody. This is the human condition. You fall madly in lust with them, and you want them, but they're really not a good person. I don't care. Well, fine. Well, you can spend all your time constantly controlling them, and it's going to go constantly up and down. You cannot change a person. You can dominate them for short periods of time, but they're going to go back to what they are. And you can't change what somebody is. People never change. What they do in one instance, they'll do in the next instance. It's just the way it is in life, and we all need to understand that. So if you get set on a particular person, you've got to have them. Well, it does work to a certain extent, but you're going to have to hammer them in constant control. It's like keeping a leash on somebody 24/7. So it doesn't work out, and you ultimately need to understand how all that works. So if you unjustly, it generally doesn't work. So keep that in mind. This is why when you really get into the hoodlum groups, these negative or evil groups that are out there, it's not really magic that empowers them. It's not demons that are helping them. It's guns and gangs that control this world. It's as simple as that. I think they made a movie, and I always forget the name of it, and I looked it up one of these times, but The Whole World Ran by Magic. And there was this detective. It was really a cool concept. This detective refused to use magic. I'm not using magic like all these bad people. It was a great, I think it was set like in the 1940s, like a noir film. What's that? Cool picture. I think they made 2 of them, I was told at one time, but I don't know if I ever downloaded those or not, but there's a cool film out there. I don't even remember the title. But the bottom line is that this is the reality. These things work, but there's a higher energy here. The higher energy doesn't allow certain things to manifest, and particularly if you're trying to produce something positive for you. So if I got to have this job. Well, that job sucked. Oh, it looks good, though. The pay is good. Yeah, but if we were to put the crystal ball, look into the future, you'd find that you're getting in a hotbed of scum, that you're going to make your life horrible. And in the long run, for a short benefit you would have, it would have turned into a long hell. So it's not going to happen. And this is a lot of things. And as I said, this happens with relationships all the time. It also happens in justice cases. If you are unjust, seeking justice, well, to a certain extent, even look out. Not only will it not manifest, but there's a great possibility that it will come back on you. Now, this is always something that is in conflict or people don't understand the premises here. But you generally, especially if you're not a very strong-willed person, if you're doing something and you're subconsciously say, this is wrong, you're going to bring the negativity back on you and actually hurt yourself. So there are some built-in protections. Of course, evil people do this all the time, and I'm not sure how much they're affected or not. But when we look at the high-level evil people in history, most of these people haven't done all that well in the long run. Most dictators have been overthrown to a large degree. But we do have to understand that a lot of these people have lived very well for long, long lives. Another thing that is misunderstood about a lot of mafia kingpins. Oh, they all die. No, they don't. Some of them have lived very well into very old age and so forth. So that's all part of what goes on. So what does that actually mean with all of that? But the bottom line is that life is full of ups and downs, and the life is full of bad people trying to hurt you, directly and indirectly. And some of these things shape your life and are quite traumatic. Retribution is called for. If you don't stop these people, they're going to hurt somebody else. So this is one of the problems with society, is that people are hurt by other people and they're never stopped. They go on. There are child molesters that molest hundreds of children because they weren't stopped at the first gate. This is what happens when you don't follow through. And everybody, really, as much as you know, everybody knows what right is. And if you're doing something wrong, you're going to know it. And that's one of the problems of how these things come back on people who are not doing it with 100% justification. But this is important to understand. But having the technology, using proper technology, now you don't want to make deals with demons. These are unreliable and dangerous. You use and you can read about this on our actual page. You want to use negative energies, not demonic energies. And that's what we stay away from with all of our different tools that are used in this area. Now, there are demons, and using demons, working with the devil to do God's work is an old saying. Well, that's a dangerous way to operate, but I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're not participating in empowering these evil spirits. So, if you were to use a demon to attack someone else in a justified manner, is there anything wrong with that? Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Most things are how you use them, not the tool itself. A gun is not evil. A gun is only evil when you use it for bad purposes or to hurt innocents. You can use it to protect yourself. You can use it for sport. So it's neutral. Demons are neutral in the way you use them, but they are toxic energies. People think that nuclear power is so wonderful. I mean, apparently Oliver Stone's going to come out and say how we need nuclear power in a new documentary. Mental case? We don't need nuclear power, but that's not the point. So the point is that people think that's wonderful. Oh, well, yeah, but we have this leftover toxic waste that we can't touch for, 500,000 years. So what? So, people rationalize a lot of things. But the bottom line is that as long as you are not worshiping and making blood sacrifices to these entities, there's nothing wrong with using their destructive powers. And this is something that confuses the Western world in general. It doesn't confuse most other places where they see people like Shiva, which is known as the Great Destroyer. Well, that's a devil, isn't it? It destroys things. No, it destroys the old, bad, and corrupt and replaces it with the new. Now, that's one way of looking at it. But we need to understand that. So giving a normal or a non-bad sacrifice, meaning you give them candy, fruit, a cigar, or something to thank them for helping you, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You don't pray to them, you don't worship them, and you sure as hell never give blood because this connects you to the entity. They want you to do that, and they may even tell you to do that. Well, you're a sucker if you do that. That's just a scam like the local hoodlums do, or the mafia does to trick you. Hey, buddy, here's $5,000. Yeah, I'm just giving it to you, you're a buddy. And then a month later say, hey, buddy, remember I gave you $5,000? Well, I need help now. This is the kind of stuff that goes on. So you have to be careful and understand this. And there are many ways to do it. Now, subtle energy physics is about using informational energetic fields and putting them together to form a particular type of energy or even physical matter. Advanced practices, you also can take that matter and rip it apart. Basically, producing what was physical to become completely non-physical. But these are extremely advanced technologies and understanding, and they're in development stages. They're not in research stages. They're in development stages. But that's not necessarily the most critical area of our lives. We need to be able to handle higher consciousness. We need to be able to heal people, and people should live double what they do now, because I think people would really take care of the earth better. So if you knew that your children were going to be with you for 70, 80 years, and you were going to live 70, 80 years more, I think people would be much more careful with everything. They wouldn't pollute the planet. They would make things that last. I think the basic result of long life would be extremely positive. But you're scientists. Oh, people will not. They'll put everything off. They won't do anything because they got time. Who's ever heard something like that? Now, of course, there's going to be procrastinators and bozo boob heads, clown school graduates, criminals that are skeptics, deviates, a whole bunch of people that never graduated high school. Well, all of these people will be out there to to hurt the bigger picture. But I think even they would look at the world quite different if they knew they wouldn't be old and feeble, which is basically you've got like 40 years before you're in trouble. Basically, when you reach 60, almost everybody is sick, has a problem, one way or another, and what do you got? 18 years to go, 20 years to go? Well, that isn't much to plan on. If you had double that time, I think the world would be a much better place. And people could really set into long-term projects that they could see come to fruition that would really help and do something. So all of these are what we have to look at and the reality of that. So this is something that is covered in my advanced courses, and we do make certain technologies, and there are special radionic type machines that I've made in the past for these type of energies. Right now we have some justice tools that we offer. These are all very effective, and everybody should have this. And bad people you should work on. You should work on people that are hurting you in the society and stop them from hurting others. This is just normal. And if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. This is all part of the process. So these are all part of it, but I don't know how many people understand this area of radionics. It's one of the many things that isn't discussed, but it's become very popular in the black magic area of radionics, and radionics in general, in the United States in particular, has been completely taken over by evil, basically Satanist and black magic practitioners who have made all sorts of toxic tools that you're going to use. Fortunately, their technologies are root poor. They're dumb, they're stupid, they're designed by morons, and they build garbage. So fortunately, that's what's going on there. Some are even using toxic energies that make themselves personally sick. So it's really, things have bounced back on these people, and they're never really going to achieve much. As I said, in the end, what rules this society and what controls other people is not any psychic energy. It's not some sort of beam weapon that disrupts you that may not be that physical in nature. It's guns and gangs. And those gangs may be something as common as street gangs who work with all the other organizations in the country, or just something that is up higher level that uses all sorts of pseudo terms to describe who they are when they're really just a gang. That's the way it all is. So, when money is God and there is no honor based in any way, and you don't give a damn about your fellow man and can drive by them in a $250,000 car like they do in Hollywood when there are 30,000 people living on the street in Los Angeles, that's pretty satanic as far as I'm concerned. But that's how the society works. And those people tend to be the liberal screening people. The people with the largest homeless populations are those neighborhoods or those states that have voted in all these crybaby Democrats which fill their pockets and don't do anything for the people. $100 billion surplus, and there's no talk about taking care of the homeless problem, taking care of medical problem, nothing. They want to give back a lot. Don't give it back. You've already stolen it from the people you didn't need. Let's make a better society. That better society will pay you back tenfold in taxes, sales taxes, and less services less sick people, less prisons. These aren't expenses. They're investments that will pay you back tenfold. But this is how we have to look at things. We have to understand the corruptness of mankind has never been any different. There are books written about the corruption during the Roman empires. Particularly, General Custer wrote about the horrible corruption and the terrible things done to the American Indians by the Ulysses S. Grant presidency. It was highly corrupt. It ain't new, baby, and it ain't going anywhere. And the only thing that may help a little bit, if the individual person working out of a state of gnosis, a state of centered understanding, takes the retribution that should be theirs and brings justice in general. Until next time.